morning. Did you notice I got my haircut? Long time ago, I had a dream. I don't mean a dream like a vision, or it was like a vision, but I mean like a vision for my life or an intent for my life. It was it was an actual dream that I had um, repeatedly. And after that dream, for a few days, I'd be distraught, worried, and sometimes I just let myself think that it was because of my upbringing and because of my trauma in my life that good morning. It is all right. I don't know why it would be garbled. So let me get one more person on and see if it still is. Oh, it's one of those days. Not sure what to do. Just let me know if it stays garbled, would you? I had this dream off and on over the years that well, from my late 30s, and I'm 75, so okay, I'm just gonna take them off. I'm not quite sure how to do this. I'll be right back. Okay, thanks, honey. And I hope you can hear me. So let me know because I'm outside. Okay, now how's it go? How's the sound now? I have to wait till somebody texts. It could be our internet, and it could be Facebook. Could be energy. Could be disturbance in the field. We'll have to see. Okay, thank you, Ann. Um, but the dream was about a period of time, and that period of time lately I've been thinking is now. Um, and now it could be off and on for um, a few years. Good morning. But this morning I woke up and the dream was really strong. Not the dream, the memory of the dream was really strong. And I'd watched on Netflix, like one of his series last night, and it was a superhero thing, and the superheroes always having to balance his or her capacity and and the effect it had on the field, we would say, in the field of Tantramat. And sometimes that's what it's like to be psychic, to be me, to have a fortuitous ability to navigate. Uh, Joseph Dominguez would have called it debris, the debris field. And what is a debris field? Well, in this particular dream, which I haven't quite totally unpacked yet, a debris field is where we get foggy. I don't mean physically foggy. I don't even mean foggy in a way that some people are foggy right now. It, but it has a feeling of being lost in the fog. And usually we don't even hardly know that we're in the fog or that we're lost. And truthfully, we may not be. I don't know that answer. But human beings don't, it's still hard for people to think they're at the effect of the Schumann resonance or solar flares or barometric shifts or can you imagine how hard it would be for human beings to consider that they may be going through this debris field at a collective level? And it's what I said in one of the calls I was on about the astral belt around this planet. It's different than astral travel. Unfortunately, there's two words that address the same thing, or address two different things. It's like a debris field. And for the most part, we live in that debris field to some level. As human beings, we would call it the collective unconscious, being at the effect of the world around us and doing our best in the face of it. But there's this period of time that I was present to in my late 30s, early 40s. And I think the way I approached it for myself was hoping we made it to the other side. And I think it is what had us adopt this kind of phrase that we used to say at Sanctuary whenever I'd leave or somebody'd leave or somebody'd go to do a course. When they'd leave, we'd say, hope to see you on the other side. But it was a sincere hope because we didn't know if the person went away and they become transformed or if they went through a state shift or if life opened up for them in a different way. Would the people they left even be part of what they registered as connection, as being connected to? And I see this happen often in relationships where, the husband or the wife comes to the partner and says, I'm not in love with you anymore. And they seem to just be gone. But in this dream, I saw this literal dream, for those of you that weren't on the beginning. I saw this period of time where in the dream, we hit the densest part of the fog. And the fog is like where we go unconscious, where we're kind of isolated from each other and where we're no longer able to experience our direct link with creation. We really feel like in a cotton ball, so to speak. And we do it it happens to some extent anyway, because we are swimming in a sea of collective unconsciousness, and our capacity to be conscious is why I have taken myself out of a certain paradigm of leader follower it, and am rigorously taking a stand for and holding tight to a self-study and self-training, one's own ability to stay conscious in the fog, one's ability to recognize a fogged consciousness, and to be able to come almost to a precision point, a focal point in oneself, a little bit like in meditate when you learn meditation and you concentrate on the flame of the candle, and then the work we did in iMagi, to how to kind of find the doorway through that fog, through that collective unconscious that we're presently affected by. And by the way, we don't have to be unconscious to be affected by it. It's just hard. Like if when there are fires in California, or I guess fires in New Mexico, it's as much as you would like to breathe fresh air, your system is affected by the smoke. And so it's systemic, and we carry within ourselves a capacity for consciousness that can go beyond the unconsciousness. But I've often found, and maybe this is advice, if consciousness, hold on, it's why I wear my earbuds. If consciousness is your interest, then the capacity to discover in yourself what has you stay conscious probably is of interest also. So there's two analogies. One is the ability to concentrate on the flame of a candle till your mind sort of slips through into a more conscious state. A conscious state doesn't mean details or your to-do list. It means that you're kind of in a still point, that where there's nothing to do. And there's hardly any brain thought. They call it the no mind, or the mindfulness. But I knew that there would be a period of time in this dream, a group of people that had been very close to each other. And at that time, I assumed it was our sanctuary. We realized that we were moving through this fog, dimensionally, like through our consciousness, and that it always been there, but that the more awake we got, it's kind of like the more your nose is sensitive to smoke, the more you smell smoke. So our consciousness was aware that we were elevating, we were expanding and moving into higher frequencies, and that the fog was getting thicker because it does that. It either gets thicker, the fogged mind either gets thicker because we're moving through it and we are no longer controlled by it, or it's because we're actually in our astral nature, that different than the astral belt, in our travel astral nature, we're traveling dimensionally and we're hitting the fog that surrounds the planet that keeps humanity unconscious and at the effect of things. So in this dream, and in that dream, there were people that were part of sanctuary. We were desperately clinging to each other's hands, and we had somehow not been able to make a circle where we felt like if we could just make that circle, that looping thing we tell you not to do with your mind. You want to do a looping thing every now and then because you want the circuitry to move between the hands and build through the circling of connection with the people. And but we had not gotten the circle closed. We had not been able to close the circle in time. And in the dream, we were holding to each other's hands a little bit like if you're the part of uh, centrifugal force, like the centrifugal force of the spin is trying to pull you all apart. And your mind is forgetting to keep a tight grip on each other's hands. Yeah, you're right. It was a pretty terrifying dream. And when I'd come out of it for days, I would be so disturbed. And I'm actually not saying anything's happening like that now at that level. But what came out of that, I think that's when I lived in Washington, D.C., is when that all happened. Around the time I had my daughter first and then Erin after. But it made me very focused on staying conscious to connection, to that was the clue, that was the clue. So this morning, somehow I after that sitcom I watched last night, and watching this kind of, I feel something in the force. I feel something in the consciousness, and I do feel it. And I feel life as we know it dismantling, either for real, circumstantially, or in the consciousness. Reality as we've known it, dismantling. And I have a strong sense that our psyche is dismantling. And when our psyche dismantles, it's actually a good thing because it's a little bit like you take something apart so it can air out, or things that have been caught there you can get rid of them. But it's always a fairly unnerving time for individually. It's unnerving for sure. Collectively, I'd imagine it might be something people might want not to talk about. They just want to kind of hope we can keep holding on to each other. But it wouldn't be right if my superpower, which is my psychic ability, my ability to mystically be aware of things that most human beings aren't aware of, it wouldn't be right not to at least bring it up, at least give human beings a chance to consider it. And the whole purpose of being psychic is to predict, to forecast, to say what's going on, and to give the people the best chance to move through it like a storm. So yesterday night, I started pulling these plants that need to be pulled. They seed. They're in the process of beginning to seed, and we have to get them out of there before they seed, because they're very. They burrow into the feed, and they're bad for animals. And animals and plants that aren't bad for animals are our priority here. And but it was interesting when I was out there last night pulling them. There was a plant, not that plant, and it caught my attention. And I've learned when something catches my attention to go to this still point, this non-mind register, this being present to, opening up beyond the thinking mind, for in order to connect, into the higher frequency bases that don't really have mental acuity. They're more states of frequency states and meta states of consciousness that certain aberrations of reality can't exist there. And of course, the point is that if you can get to those still points, those points where you can get outside the door of the chatty Cathy mind and of the disturbance of the debris field, into those. I call them still points, but I'm using that figuratively, not as a medical or metaphysical term. But right past that door, it's still. It takes a while to refocus and reset and move around past the fog. It takes a minute to do that. But the plant really caught my attention. Then I noticed there was one of our magical stones sitting on the plant, and like it wasn't there the second before. So I just made note of it. I made note that the physical world, which is where you find it, particularly in nature and animals, that the physical world was tapping me to let me know that what I was paying attention to was of note, was worthy of being in that, worthy of uh, moving with it, being present to it. And so this morning I woke up and had this feeling that's really a paradox, because on one hand you have to move yourself to a still point within your own consciousness where you're not at the effect of the world around you, which also includes human beings sometimes, in simple things like demands upon you. Or this morning I woke up with the thought that I was disappointed in myself, which I've never even, I'm sure I had that thought, but it was like a conscious debris thought floating through in my conscious state that once had ruled me in my unconscious state. And that's the other thing happening, is we have thought forms that are rising from our unconscious state in our conscious state. And it's really a good idea not to give them merit, even if they affect you as merit. And I just thought it was such a curious, especially after the I Magi call, such a curious thought that I'm disappointed in myself. Myself being I am that, and where I am that is, because probably more than anything, that's been my saving grace. So it was curious. It was like being on the dark side of the mirror, or being on the negative of a photo, being in the negative of a photo. It was a very odd experience, and it carried no merit. In other words, it gave me no action. It gave me no way to figure out what it was related to, so that I could see if it was calling for an action or calling for something that was trying to get my attention. So that the point is, this kind of interesting conversation monologue, it's multiple facets of consciousness were going on. First of all, the plant and the little stone that, like right now, we have a dove that is a pigeon that is basically coming around me at different points and talking to me. He's been on our roof, now he's on the other roof, then he went on the wall. And you begin to notice that there's a stirring in the natural world. There's a stirring that you begin to notice, because the natural world is what lets you know that you're engaging in a activity of consciousness. So just to recap, so one is I began to notice things that got my attention, almost like tunnel vision in the natural world. And because they got my attention, I knew I was on the threshold of where the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, the unconsciousness of the mind and the consciousness of the mind are fading in and out of each other, or fogging and clearing, or not really fogging and getting past the fog, not really in clarity yet. And then this morning, when I woke up, my odd thought about I'm really disappointed in myself, and there was a small laundry list of whys, but it just felt so odd to think it. It didn't seem to have merit. And yet it was affecting my gut and making me feel sad and lonely and all these things that just about that much of my conscious mind, who I am as a conscious being, realized I was in the debris field of the unconscious state of affairs I think we're emerging out of now. But I also think it's a very delicate point, delicate moment. I think it's a very fragile moment of self-care, a self-study and self-training. Because you can use, when you're in this, uh, molecular goop of fogginess that is basically compromise the human spirit, compromise a human being's relationship with themselves and other human beings. Really, the self-study isn't about what am I. The self-study is about how do I stay conscious? How do I stay connected to myself? How do I stay connected to the world around me, this natural world most particularly? And and to recognize that there will be a sealing off from the human world sometimes, or from human interaction, because you're resetting, you're reestablishing your field. You're like getting, it's like you're making sure that the water's clean in your tank and the air is fresh in your field, and that your auric field is holding its own and building its strength, stamina, capacity, so it's not affected by. Thank you for the hearts. I'm really kind of struggling to have this conversation. Not struggling to have it, struggling to articulate it. But I just feel like it's important that we recognize that we're affected by this unconsciousness that we have been swimming in for a very long time, and that we've been inside it and it's had us and we've been at the effect of it, and it's tricky coming out of it. That's all I want to say. It's not tricky like you won't come out of it, I think. I'm not sure about that. Here's the part I am sure about, because it's not just good enough to come out of it as an individual. You want to, hi Julie, you want to come out of it collectively, a small collective. In Santok, he calls it kinship, and a kind of a kinship. I love that. And my kinship with animals and plants and nature and the earth and the sky, that's always been stronger than human beings. But this dream I had back in my late 30s and now on my mind right now, um, is this place where we have to, I think we're in this place where we're moving out of the fog of the unconsciousness of humanity, that humanity's, including ourselves as humanity, has been in for a long time. And I'm just personally sharing, just in case you get tips from it, in case if something starts to happen to you, you have some navigational capacity, some ability to recognize it, to catch on. Like this morning when I had that thought, I'm disappointed in me. I caught on that was a subconscious, unconscious thought that was releasing from my subconscious, unconscious, both words, unconsciousness. And it was showing up in my conscious mind. And, uh, and that I need to make sure that I'm strong enough that when the collective, the kinship of humanity starts, whatever group or collective or combination of people, I think we have a both and. They're both not as deeply active as the collective, not as deeply active as the individual yet. But I know why. I know why I'm insular and quiet, and the things that are happening circumstantially in my life. Same way I went through my physical collapse after COVID, I got so quiet. I got so still because I had to use every ounce of my consciousness to work with my physical body to bring it back into alignment with itself and be able to operate once again in its high frequency nature. Now I'm going through something with money, and I'm going down to that 0 point. And the whole point is not to let anything affect you, to literally get where you're unaffected, not numb, because that's the key. Because we've learned to do is go numb, but if we go numb, we also go unconscious. But you get down to that 0 point. Maybe we should watch What the Bleep, the first, I think, 20 minutes of What the Bleep over and over and over again. Maybe I can see if I can record that. Because it talks about you move into infinite possibility until you're at the 0 point where there's both no possibility and infinite possibility. Both occur at the same place. And that's the doorway. That's the doorway into our conscious mind, but also the consciousness within which that conscious mind has place. It's what we call realities of unity. And it moves slow. It isn't instant. Linear time starts to slow down at here comes the plane. The linear mind starts to slow down because the mind, the meta mind, begins to go towards that 0 point. And so when I saw that little plant that I didn't pull, it wasn't one of those that I'm pulling, and that little rock on it, it brought my mind into that 0 point. It brought my mind back. And then this morning, I'm probably not supposed to say this on YouTube, on Facebook, but when I was sitting on the John, I looked down and there was this interesting drawing of Kevin's hair, or maybe not Kevin's hair, it was long hair, it might have been somebody's hair. In fact, now that I'm talking about it, I don't know whose hair it could have been. It was gray and it was long, and I don't have that long a hair. But it was lying in front of me, and it looked like the sacred the sacred language of Damanhur, and I got a really clear instruction to go through my Braille Tale cards, and I know it's in there, and and I know it was another. It's not like a message from the universe. It takes you to that 0 point because you have no idea what it is, and it's a universe literally helping you make yourself stationary. Liz just wrote about the creation templates. That's what they do. They take you down to that 0 point of infinite possibility and no possibility, that place where when you're in that no possibility place, it just clears out all the debris, all the expectations, all the thwarted intentions, all the thoughts like, I'm disappointed in myself. I still find that the strangest thought to come up. I can't even figure out how to make it a rational exploration. That's why it's so odd as a thought. But the physical universe helps you. That's all I'm saying. The physical universe helps you be still. It helps you. You have to reach that 0 point. And the nature will trigger you into it. That strange two hairs on my bathroom floor triggered me into it. The memory of the dream triggered me into paying attention to getting my mind to that 0 point. It's interesting what Liz wrote because we're in the midst of doing some really heavy-duty editing to the chapters on intimacy, the emotional palate, the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, the vagus nerve, the interior nervous system, neurons, glia, uh, the midbrain. So all that depth, deep, deep, intense writing um, got me awake. It woke me up out of whatever drift I was in, and so everything becomes sharper, even though time starts to move slower, because it has to move. Time has to move to that 0 point also. It has to move to that 0 point also, so that you can go into timeless time. You can go into no mind. So everything can release. It's like going into oblivion. So that everything that has been attached to you, everything that has been organizing you, can literally release. And in that release, some of which can be biological, in that release, then you have a clear space, an unpeopled space within which something to rise. I did that in February with my body, and I'm just now, I'm really rebuilding my body from scratch. And still, even though there's all these years of like fatty tissue in my body, the it's not dominant in my consciousness anymore. What's dominant in my consciousness is the healthy system rising, not the unhealthy system dissolving. Um, so there's no matter what you're in, whether it's money or relationship or health or love those Latino cars. Not just Latino, they're muffler. There's life without mufflers. Um, it's important now to find that 0 point of possibility and no possibility, because even in creating possibility, we could be. Joseph talked about this when we were in Chaco Canyon with him. He talked about we have to make it through that slit in the rock. We have to have no expectation, no anticipation, no possibility, no nothing. Just the interest in the little plant with a little rock on it and the curious sacred geometry in the bathroom, and the fact I woke up with a weird thought that I didn't even know how to process its thinking. But just to constantly go back to no mind, no being at the effect of, and you'll feel very small. That's why I called it a still point in the beginning. You'll feel like you've literally gone down energetically to just a point, just a simple dot. And then you just keep going back to it till everything clears, your cellular memory, your emotional debris, or clears enough for the next recursion of yourself as a being to start to come back online. It's like, it was so fascinating to me. We did this meditation in Damanhur, and it was when I was just so weak from post-COVID, but I hadn't done any meditation, so I hadn't even connected with my auric or my subtle bodies. When I sat down in the chair, I was like, oh my goodness, they were like defunct. I had no color around me. My auric field is usually quite thick around my body. It was hardly an eighth of an inch. Um, and then as I continued to go back and do the meditation, it was really beautiful to see my subtle bodies starting to build back. So I want to be clear, we're talking about etheric territory. We're talking about our subtle bodies, our energy field. And if you go down to ground zero, 0 point, then it doesn't, there's this queer thing, you wrap it all up and you put it in a little thing, but when you open it, it pops into this gigantic thing. Um, flat thing for the green screen to go behind you, but putting it back into its small thing can be quite hard. And that's kind of what we're doing. Because the odd thing about going down to that just being still is that your auric field gets larger. Your field, the field of consciousness of which you're a part, takes over. Remember, it's not a thinking mind, it's a meta state. It's a space, spatial. It gets bigger, but the end result is that then you begin to notice you have a new landscape you're moving around on. We got to get out of the mesmeration of fixing everything. We really have to become interested in being consciously conscious and realizing that we operate between illusion and reality, between separation and disconnection and connection, between just being our thoughts and our bodies and our even our we're like stripped of our auric territories so that we are at the effect of thought, at the effect of circumstance, at the effect of people. And it's not like we're trying to solve a universal problem. It's about now. It's about now, probably June, July, August, September, at least. And being of the older mystery schools, of the ancient temples, of the grotto, of the grove, and of the Irish, to where they would know they were in a transitional, that reality, that consciousness was in a transitional state, that it was something was clearing, so something could be built, and they lined up with that. But the end result, I'm clear about from the memory of that dream. It's why I'm so interested in each individual person right now. Because as each individual person goes down to not being at the effect of anything in the moment, you may be at the effect of it the next second, but it won't be so. It won't have the grab it had before. And if it does, just go back to the 0 point. But first, the human being, all these cultish things about purifying yourself or becoming a state of purity. No, it just means not letting anything stick to you anymore. You can have the thought, but you don't have to bite it. You can have even the reaction and not hold it as real, or not something you choose to be real, which is why the creation templates. Can you hear that? It's music in a car. And I don't know where it is, what it's doing. It's parked outside our house. There's no stop sign there. But see how it gets my attention? I'm not dominated by needing to talk to you and stay focused on you. I mean, it's just interesting. The netherworlds have an amazing way of tending to us when we're transitioning out of a certain level of unconsciousness, and everything's clearing out in us, and sometimes trying to hold on to us just because it became adapted to. But if you don't pay attention to something, it goes away. It's that simple. And if you pay attention to something, it stays. So the end dynamic is, though, I think there's a point in time and space, somewhere between an arc of September, October, where as a mystic, because that's what I am, that there might be a collective group of people in different avenues. I'm not saying where I am, although obviously I'm paying attention to it, that they will that they will have gone to their 0 point, that they have done everything they could not to be at the effect of whatever's affecting them. And then when the collective starts to re-glue itself back into its empathy, its connective design of existence, we won't let go of each other's hands. We won't be distracted. Our personal lives won't cause us to let go of another, our thoughts about ourselves, our thoughts about them. If that happens in September and October, somebody should make a note of what I'm saying. We'll start to be on the other side of something that is quite remarkable. Just to support what Liz was saying about the creation templates, when you reach that CC, that 0 point, that's why you often have the oddest feeling of don't know where you are, because you're no longer anywhere and you're not yet somewhere. But everything clears out that's not in alignment with your direct link with creation, and a space has been made for that which you have written to come into existence. The other curious thing, which is totally aside from this conversation, maybe, I found that the most interesting thing about cacti, because I was sitting under my apricot tree, our apricot tree, and I was sitting by our cactus, and I wasn't touching the cactus. In fact, I was probably about a foot from it, the one of its pear-shaped thing. And what's so interesting is last night I put on my bottoms of my swimsuit, and I noticed I had cactus thorns. They're little thread, needle-like things sticking out of my body. And she had said, I think the cactus needles travel, and they do, because there's no way I would have gotten them where they were in my legs and on my chest. And it's sort of like that with the fog or the stickiness. Mafu, he was a channel. You should look him up. He was great. Maybe still is, I don't know. But he used to say, oh shoot, I forgot it. Art thou? I can't remember. But he basically meant, kind of like Rabbi Gelberman, are you ready? Are you ready for life? That's kind of where we're at. I can't believe I can't remember what Mafu used to say. It was so great. But that's a 0 point, that ability to, are you ready? Have you let everything, have you not bought the program? have you let nature reset you, and the creation templates reset you, and your own ability to be still and to not buy it, to not be being at the fact doesn't mean you're not emotional, not that you're not sad or glad or mad or something. It just means that you're not using it to make beliefs or concepts that you wouldn't choose if you were in your right mind. 3 months, ladies and gentlemen, June, July, August, into September. It's everything I'll be doing is just to keep helping the cellular system remember its 0 point, whether it's a consult or an activation or an event. Why? Because it's what's up. It's just what's up. That's all. Thank you for being with me today. A contemplative moment for a modern mystic. Namaste.